Some people believe that the word Yosemite comes from the word for grizzly bear. Grizzly bears have a very strong connection to Yosemite, although it's been a very long time since we've seen one in Yosemite. The Miwok people in Yosemite Valley were divided into moieties. There were people south of the river were named for Coyote, Ahele, and they were water people. People north of the river were land people, and they were named for grizzly bear, or Uzumati. Mati referring to bear, Uzu referring to grizzly. The black bear is called Humati. For the Miwok people, the grizzly bear was the, for lack of a better term, spirit animal, the protector of the people.
People are fascinated by grizzlies. They kind of embody these human traits that we as a culture admire. Persistence, never say die, undaunted. And so we raise the animal to this icon that we think exemplifies our better natures. This depiction of the grizzly as being heroic and iconic for the state of California.
Every Californian has seen that image of a grizzly bear on our flag, and that matters. That tells us that it matters. The places where people live now were fully populated by grizzly bears. Grizzly bears dining on whale carcasses on the beach, where now people lounge and relax. There were grizzly bears where Los Angeles is now. There were lots of grizzly bears where San Francisco is today. So to go from 10,000 grizzly bears estimated to live in California at the time of statehood to none by 1925, 75 years later, is really quite startling. We have lost something that we're mostly not aware of, something that used to be so numerous, and we hunted them to extinction. The grizzly bear's presence in Yosemite was one of the many things that added to its wildness that we're now missing. And I think it's important for us to know about where the name Yosemite comes from, for us to know about a character like Grizzly Adams.
Grizzly Adams was one of the shows when I was growing up as a kid, you know. You got this hairy old guy, and he's got a bear, his best friend.
So most people don't realize that Grizzly Adams was a real person. He capitalizes on the romance and the mystique of the frontiersman and has what he calls the Mountaineer Museum right in San Francisco on Clay Street, where you can come and see his live menagerie of grizzly bears, black bears, eagles, all sorts of things. He describes having a base of operations or a hunting camp near or in Yosemite at the headwaters of the Merced River.
He sometimes would find a denning female, kill the mother, take the cub, and raise it.
And one of these cubs became his most famous bear, Benjamin Franklin, well enough known as a resident of San Francisco that when he died in 1858, there was an obituary written for him titled "The Death of a Distinguished Native Californian." Grizzly Adams himself passes away 2 years later in 1860 and is buried in his home state of Massachusetts. We don't know what became of the remains of Ben Franklin.
There are a lot of good stories about the last grizzlies. Wellman's bear was one of them.
We have a fascinating account from 1887 written up by a rancher named Robert Wellman, who describes the killing of what some consider to be the last grizzly in Yosemite. Wellman is a stockman. He's running cattle near a place called Crescent Lake in the south part of Yosemite. And he finds a carcass of one of his cattle, and he finds bear tracks around this carcass, and he realizes there's a grizzly bear here. So he goes to Jim Duncan, who's his nearest neighbor. Duncan is a bear hunter. Duncan is skeptical, but he sees the size of the track, and he says, honest to goodness, this is a grizzly bear. Let's see what we can do to get it. It takes them several days of hard work, but they are successful in killing the grizzly, which Jim Duncan then sells to Thomas Hill, the Yosemite painter, who displays the hide on the walls of his studio in Wawona. Eventually, the grizzly pelt is given to the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology in Berkeley, and that's where it is today. It's one of the very few remnants of the last of the California grizzlies.
I believe we are less when we don't have grizzlies and wolves and mountain lions. These all make up the world that we're a part of. And so we have to be aware of the animals and plants that are left to us to realize how quickly they can be gone.
And yeah, it would be nice to see the California grizzly back, but I think we've reached a point of no return for some of those animal species, and we just have to learn from our mistakes and prevent it from happening to other animals.
Perhaps we shouldn't take over every wild place and every wild thing, that we should make space for wild animals, for plants that are rare, for landscapes that are rare. That should be important to us.